Imagine a stone so heavy that if you placed 1,200 mid-sized sedans on a scale, they would still not equal its weight. Now, imagine moving that stone not with hydraulics, nuclear power, or cranes, but with muscle, rope, and wood. This is not a hypothetical engineering problem. It is a reality that sits quietly in the Baffle Valley of Lebanon. For centuries, travelers, emperors, and archaeologists have stood in the shadow of the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek, craned their necks upward, and asked the same impossible question. How? How did a civilization without electricity or steel engines cut, transport, and lift limestone blocks weighing up to 800 tons? And perhaps more hauntingly, what kind of terrifying ambition drives a human empire to attempt the impossible, knowing that the price of failure, and even the price of success, is paid in blood and broken bodies? To understand the sheer madness of Baalbek, you must first understand the landscape. This is not a ruin that hides in the jungle or buries itself in the sand. It dominates the horizon. When the Romans arrived here, they didn't just want to build a temple. They wanted to build a statement. They wanted to prove that Rome was not just a political power, but a force of nature. But as you walk toward the western wall of the temple podium, the Roman arrogance seems to vanish, replaced by something far older and more mysterious. Here, 20 feet off the ground, sit 3 limestone blocks known collectively as the Trilithon. They are the largest building blocks ever used in construction on Earth. Each one weighs approximately 800 tons. To put that into perspective, the largest stone in the Great Pyramid of Giza weighs about 80 tons. The builders of Baalbek didn't just beat the Egyptians. They multiplied their achievements by a factor of 10. The precision is unnerving, despite their incomprehensible weight. These stones are fitted so tightly that you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. They are not merely piled up. They are engineered, and they were not found right next to the temple. They were quarried nearly a mile away. This creates a logistical nightmare that modern engineers still struggle to simulate in computer models. The terrain between the quarry and the temple is not a flat, paved highway. It is uneven, rocky ground. To move an 800-ton object over such a distance requires a road as solid as concrete, because any soft earth would simply swallow the rollers, grounding the stone instantly. So, before they could even move the stones, they had to terraform the landscape, building a causeway that was a monumental construction project in its own right. But the mystery deepens when you leave the temple complex and travel south to the quarry itself. If the Trilithon stones are the champions of the ancient world, the stones left in the quarry are the titans that never made it to the arena. Here lies the stone of the pregnant woman, a monolith that for centuries was believed to be the largest cut stone in the world, weighing an estimated 1,000 tons. It lies at an angle, almost ready to be lifted, attached to the bedrock by a mere sliver of rock on its underside. For hundreds of years, local legends whisper that only the supernatural, jinns or demons, could have moved such weight, and for a long time, it was easy to believe them. But in 2014, the story changed again. Archaeologists discovered yet another stone, buried underneath the first ones, hidden by centuries of debris. They call it the Forgotten Stone. It weighs 1,650 tons. It is the largest single piece of stone ever carved by human hands. The existence of these quarry stones changes the narrative. They tell us that the Trilithon was not the limit of the builders' ambition. It was a compromise. The builders intended to use these even larger monsters. They cut them, they shaped them, and they prepared to move them. But something stopped them. Was it a crack in the stone? A realization that they had finally exceeded the limits of physics? Or did the empire simply run out of money and patience? The stone of the pregnant woman has a visible fissure, a heartbreaking flaw that likely appeared just as the work was nearing completion, rendering years of labor useless in a split second. It serves as a frozen monument to the moment where human reach finally exceeded its grasp. So, how is it done? How do you move the immovable? Historians and engineers have debated this for decades, and the answers are as ingenious as they are brutal. The Romans were masters of the capstan, a vertical winch system. Imagine a massive wooden drum anchored into the ground. Horizontal bars stick out from it like the spokes of a wheel. Men push against these bars, walking in circles, winding a rope around the drum. This simple machine multiplies human force. But for 1,000-ton stone, one capstan is useless. You would need a forest of them. Some calculations suggest a system of over 100 capstans, all connected to stone with miles of thick hemp rope, operated simultaneously by thousands of men. Coordinate this image in your mind. It is not just about strength. It is about rhythm. If one team on the left pulls harder than the team on the right, the stone twists. If it twists, it grinds off the rollers. If it slides off the rollers, it sinks into the earth, and it may never move again. The operation would have required a conductor, a signal system of drums or trumpets, to ensure that thousands of men exerted exactly the same amount of force at exactly the same second. It was a machine made of human bodies, and the rollers themselves presented a deadly problem. We can only take so much weight before it splinters. To support 800 tons, you would need exceptional timber, likely imported cedars, and you would need hundreds of them. As the stone moved forward, men would have to run into the crushing zone at the front to place new rollers, while others pulled the crushed ones from back. One slip, one stumble, and you were erased. There is also the theory of the earth ramp. To lift these stones 20 feet into the air to place them in the wall, you cannot simply hoist them. Roman cranes, the polyspastos, were brilliant inventions capable of lifting 60 tons. That is impressive, but negligible compared to the Trilithon. So, the builders likely buried the temple podium in a massive artificial hill. They built a gentle slope of earth and gravel, dragging the stones up the ramp until they were level with their final resting place, and then sliding them into position. Once the wall was finished, they had to dig the temple out again, removing millions of tons of earth just to reveal what they had built. The inefficiency is staggering. It speaks of an empire that viewed labor as a resource as cheap as air. But why? This is the question that lingers long after the engineering theories are exhausted. Why did they do it? The Romans could have built the Temple of Jupiter using smaller blocks. They could have used bricks. They could have used 20-ton stones, which were easy to handle and readily available. Why risk the entire project to treasury and thousands of lives for 3 specific, impossible stones? The answer lies in the psychology of power. Baalbek, or Heliopolis as it was known then, was an important religious center, but it was also a frontier. It stood on the edge of the Roman world, facing the east. By placing the largest stones on earth in the foundation of their temple, Rome was sending a message to the local populations, to the rival Persian Empire, and to the gods themselves. We do not just inhabit the world, we dominate it. We can do what nature cannot. But the stones of the Trilithon do not stand in isolation. To truly grasp the scale of this achievement, we must look at what stood on top of them. The Temple of Jupiter was not just a platform. It was a forest of stone. 54 massive columns once surrounded the inner sanctum. Today, only 6 remain standing. These 6 columns define the skyline of the Baffle Valley. Each one is over 60 feet tall. That is the height of a 6-story building and nearly 8 feet thick. Unlike the monoliths of the foundation, these columns consist of 3 separate drums, stacked with such terrifying accuracy that they have remained standing through centuries of earthquakes that flatten modern cities. When you stand at their base and look up, the sheer verticality makes you dizzy. It forces you to realize that the foundation stones were not the end of the project. They were merely the stage for something even more grandiose. And yet, just a stone's throw away from the gigantism of the Jupiter Temple sits a structure that offers a different kind of mystery, the Temple of Bacchus. If the Temple of Jupiter is about brute strength, the Temple of Bacchus is about beauty. It is smaller, yes, but small at Baalbek is a relative term. It is still larger than the Parthenon in Athens. Because it was protected by debris for centuries, it remains one of the best preserved Roman temples in the world. Here, the mystery is not about weight, but about detail. The doorway alone is a masterpiece of engineering. featuring a keystone that slipped out of place during an earthquake in the 1700s and hung precariously over the heads of visitors for 2 centuries before modern engineers finally secured it. Inside the Temple of Bacchus, the walls are covered in intricate carvings, poppies, grapes, dancing figures. It is a stone celebration of wine, ecstasy, and excess. It reminds us that Baalbek was not just a construction site. It was a functioning center of worship, a place where the scent of incense and the smoke of sacrifices filled the air. It was a place where Roman soldiers, tired from campaigns in the east, came to marvel at the might of their own empire. It was a psychological weapon. When a local merchant or a traveler from the desert arrived here and saw these structures, they understood instantly that resistance against Rome was futile. If they could stack mountains, they could certainly crush a rebellion. However, the sheer impossibility of Baalbek has given rise to another narrative, one that has gained massive popularity in the 21st century. Type Baalbek into any search engine, and you will eventually find a theory of ancient aliens. Proponents of this theory look at the Trilithon and the stones in the quarry, and they say humans could not do this. They argue that the technology to move 1,000 tons did not exist, and therefore, this site must be a landing pad for extraterrestrial spacecraft, or the work of a lost, high-tech civilization that predates history. It is a seductive idea. It solved the puzzle without the need for math or sweat. But in many ways, attributing Baalbek to aliens is an insult to our ancestors. It underestimates the sheer grit of the human species. The Romans and the Phoenicians before them were not primitive. They possessed a genius for mechanics that we often forget. We know from the writings of architects like Vitruvius that they understood pulleys, leverage, and force distribution intimately. The lack of written records specifically detailing the movement of the Trilithon does not mean it was magic. It likely means it was a trade secret, or simply that the records were lost in the burning of libraries and the fall of empires. The alien theory ignores the visible evidence of the quarry. The chisel marks, the failed stones, the oil lamps left behind by workers. These are not the marks of laser beams. They are the marks of iron tools driven by human muscle. The true story of Baalbek is actually more fascinating than fiction because it involves the layering of history. Long before the Romans arrived, this place was already sacred. It was a site of worship for the Phoenician god Baal, hence the name Baalbek. When the Greeks arrived, following Alexander the Great, they looked at Baal and saw their sun god, Helios, renaming the city Heliopolis, the city of the sun. When the Romans arrived, they saw their own sky god, Jupiter. They didn't destroy the old sanctity. They built on top of it. They absorbed the local gods into their own pantheon. This is why the site is so massive. It is thousands of years of religious devotion piled into one location. The stones are huge because the site had to be better than everything that came before it. But nothing lasts forever. As the Roman Empire fractured and converted to Christianity, the great temples were shut down. The Emperor Theodosius began tearing down parts of the site to build a basilica. The golden statues were melted, the oracles silenced. Then came the Islamic conquest, and Baalbek was transformed again, this time from a temple into a fortress. You can still see the Arab fortifications today, medieval walls built right on top of the Roman stones, creating a strange patchwork of history. The fortress held out against Crusaders and Mongols, turning the House of the Gods into a theater of war. The final blow, however, came from the earth itself. The Levant lies on a fault line. A series of catastrophic earthquakes, particularly in the 12th and 18th centuries, shook the Baca Valley violently. This is what toppled the 54 columns of Jupiter. This is what cracked the walls. The great stones of the Trilithon, however, rode out the waves. Their mass was their protection. While the delicate columns fell, the megaliths held firm, anchoring the site through the destruction. For centuries, Baalbek lay in ruins, visited only by brave travelers who sketched the romantic decay. It wasn't until the visit of the German Kaiser Wilhelm II in 1898 that serious preservation began. The Kaiser was awestruck. He saw in Baalbek a reflection of his own imperial ambitions. He dispatched German archaeologists to clear the rubble and map the site. It was these excavations that truly revealed the scope of the Roman engineering to the modern world. They cleared the earth ramparts, they exposed the foundations, and they brought the stone of the pregnant woman to global attention. But to fully appreciate the genius of Baalbek, we cannot just look at the individual stones. We must experience the site as the ancients did, as a journey. The Roman architects didn't just dump a temple in a field. They choreographed a theatrical experience designed to strip away your ego before you ever reach the Holy of Holies. If you were a pilgrim arriving 2,000 years ago, you would first encounter Propylaea, a massive, imposing gateway. You would climb a steep, dramatic staircase, forcing you to look up, physically lowering your head in a gesture of submission just to watch your step. Once through the gates, you wouldn't enter the temple immediately. You would be funneled into the hexagonal court. This is an architectural rarity, a six-sided courtyard open to sky. Historians believe this space acted as a buffer zone, a place of mental preparation. As the sun beat down on the limestone pavement, surrounded by 30 columns, the noise of the outside world would fade away. It was here that the faithful would gather, perhaps to buy sacrificial animals or to consult with minor priests, the tension building as they moved closer to the massive altar of Jupiter. It was this atmosphere of overwhelming power that made Baalbek not just a construction site, but the home of one of the ancient world's most famous oracles. Emperors didn't just fund this place, they feared it. There is a famous story concerning the Emperor Trajan, one of Rome's greatest military leaders. Before launching a dangerous war against the Parthian Empire in the east, Trajan stopped here. He needed to know if he would return to Rome alive, but he was skeptical. He wanted to test the oracle's power first. So, Trajan sent a sealed letter to the priest of Baalbek, containing a blank sheet of paper. He told no one what was inside. The oracle, entering a trance, commanded that a blank piece of paper be sent back to the emperor. Trajan was astounded. The god had seen through the trick. Convinced of the oracle's authenticity, he then asked his real question: will I survive the war? The oracle's response was chillingly cryptic. He handed the messenger a centurion's vine staff, broken into pieces and wrapped in a shroud. Trajan marched to war, and though he won battles, he never saw Rome again. He died of illness on the return journey, his bones brought back to the capital, broken and wrapped, just as the oracle had predicted. This story cemented Baalbek's reputation. It wasn't just a pile of rocks. It was a direct line to the divine, a place where the fate of the world was decided. Maintaining the spiritual powerhouse required a logistical operation that rivals the construction itself. While we focus on the stone movers, we often forget the support army. To keep thousands of stonemasons, carpenters, blacksmiths, and slaves working for decades, the Baca Valley had to be transformed into breadbasket of the empire. A complex network of aqueducts channeled water from the nearby springs not just for drinking, but for the industrial processes of cutting stone. The local economy boomed. Grain, wine, and oil flowed into the site. It was a city dedicated to a single purpose: building the home of a god. The sheer caloric output required to fuel the men who pulled the ropes of the Trilithon is a staggering calculation in itself. Yet, despite the grandeur, the silence eventually returned. After the earthquakes and the wars, Baalbek slept, but in the modern era, the stones have found a new voice. Since 1955, the ruins have hosted the Baalbek International Festival. It is one of the most prestigious cultural events in the Middle East. Imagine the scene. The sun sets, casting long, purple shadows over the 6 remaining columns of Jupiter. Floodlights turn the Temple of Bacchus into a glowing golden palace. And then the music starts. Legends like Ella Fitzgerald, Sting, and the grand diva of the Arab world, Farah, have stood on these steps. When Farah sang Baalbek, "I love you" under the archways of the temple, it wasn't just a concert, it was a reclamation. The sound of modern orchestras bouncing off Roman limestone creates a bridge between the past and present. It proves that while the religious function of the temple has died, its ability to bring people together and or remains untouched. During the darkest days of the Lebanese Civil War, the festival had to stop, and the silence of the ruins became a heavy symbol of the country's tragedy. But its return was a symbol of resilience. The stones have survived Roman arrogance, Christian iconoclasm, and modern artillery. They are the ultimate survivors. This resilience is perhaps the most important lesson Baalbek offers us. In an age where we build skyscrapers of glass and steel, structures designed to last perhaps 50 or 100 years before being torn down, Baalbek stands as a challenge. The builders here were not thinking about the next fiscal quarter. They were not thinking about their own lifetimes. They were thinking about eternity. They were willing to engage in a struggle with the earth itself, quarrying stones that defied the laws of physics because they believed that what they were building mattered. The irony, of course, is that the empire that built these walls is long gone. The wooden cranes have rotted, the ropes have turned to dust, and the names of the architects are forgotten. The Temple of Jupiter itself is largely a ruin, shaken apart by earthquakes and time. But the stones remain. The Trilithon has not moved an inch. The forgotten stone still waits in the quarry, patient and heavy. They have outlasted the gods they were built to honor. They have outlasted the emperors who commissioned them. They stand as a testament to a specific moment in human history when we refused to accept the limitations of our own size, when we looked at a mountain and decided we could move it piece by piece. Today, modern cranes would struggle to lift the Trilithon stones. To move the forgotten stone, we would need specialized modular transporters used for moving space shuttles or oil rig platforms. And yet, the marks of the chisels on these ancient blocks are still visible, the fingerprints of the individuals who spent their lives carving them. It is a connection across time that is both inspiring and terrifying. It forces us to ask, what are we building today that will last this long? What is our version of the Trilithon? Or have we lost the patience for this kind of permanence? The mystery of Baalbek is not just about engineering. It is about the human spirit's refusal to be small. It is a story of vanity, cruelty, genius, and endurance written in limestone. As you look at these stones, you realize that the true wonder isn't that they are so big, but that we, fragile and temporary as we are, dare to touch them at all. This brings us to a question I want to leave with you. We often look at ancient history as a time of primitive tools and limited knowledge. Yet Baalbek proves that they possess a level of organizational genius we rarely credit them for. If you had the unlimited resources of an empire, but only the technology of the ancient world, what monument would you build to ensure you were remembered for 10,000 years? Let me know your answer in the comment below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the impossible engineering of the ancient world, please hit the like button and subscribe for more documentaries that uncover the lost chapters of our history.